Okay, listen, I have not stopped talking about Artemis II. I will not stop talking about Artemis II.
Such a majestic view out here.
Amaze, amaze, amaze. Thank you, Reed.
Here's what's exciting for me is we have three wonderful people around the table today who also can't stop thinking about Artemis II. Not just the political implications of it, but also the really deeply profound implications of it. The idea that we are seeing folks who are orbiting the moon and giving us a vision of humanity that we are so badly needing at this moment. The idea that there is this gigantic dichotomy between the news that we are consuming every day on Earth, and also the fact that this moon mission and this mission that is currently orbiting the moon is actually giving us a whole new and deeply needed perspective on us, on everything that is happening on Earth right now. Those are two things that we're going to try to hold at the same time in this conversation. I got so much out of this conversation. I think that you will too. Let's get to it. I've got the co-host of CBC's The Nature of Things, Anthony Morgan, with me. Pablo the Don is here. L. Jones is here. Hello, all of you.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
How's it going, y'all? I'm delighted. I'm delighted by your faces as they lit up as I started talking about the Artemis II. I feel like that is the vibe. Like, I feel like every time that I bring it up with anybody, they just start, these astronauts got us smiling, Anthony. Is that what's happening with you?
100%. I cannot stop smiling. It's just to have a cultural moment like this that we all get to share is such a rare thing.
Yeah.
The world becomes more and more fractured as you can go to your own little pockets for media. And to have something that the whole world is talking about is really, man, it's awesome.
Turns out what it takes is something literally out of this world. No, okay, I'm not happy about it either. Okay, Artemis II is a big deal for a lot of reasons. It's the first crew of astronauts to orbit the moon in more than 50 years. Also, the first moon mission to feature a woman astronaut, that's Christina Koch, a Canadian, Jeremy Hansen, and a black astronaut, Victor Glover. Pablo, I'm going to start with you because you grew up in Florida. That is where NASA's Kennedy Space Center is. This space stuff, I feel like it's closer to you, literally just like closer to your home in a sense. What has NASA's return to outer space meant for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. As someone who grew up in Florida, being able to watch every single ISS space mission launch was incredibly fun. It was almost part of our curriculum. Like, we would go outside and watch as the ships were taking off, and then they'd show the feeds on screen in school, and it was such a huge integral part of my life. So to see it come back, and this time it's a moon mission, which has never been the reality in my lifetime, is... Everyone in my hometown's talking about this. My family's talking about this. Like, we feel like, Tom Hanks in Apollo 13. Like, we are the next astronauts. That's the vibes in Florida. Is like, you just know so much inherently about NASA. And for me specifically, I spent every single year going on a field trip to the Kennedy Space Center. So like, I could put the patch on today and like be able to go on the next mission. If they're taking civilians up, let me know. But yeah, it's just a huge part of my life, and it's so exciting to be able to share it with more people now who get to see it across social media, because before it felt like this weird, unique thing to Floridians that get to see it in real time happening.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Pablo, as you were describing the idea of like being in school and being able to step outside and see the launches, Anthony was maybe shaking his head in a little bit of jealousy. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. Elle, I'll go to you. What have these space missions meant for you personally?
Yeah, I think if we look through the history of human philosophy, religion, art, we've always looked towards space. And it's been the mystery. We've tried to interpret the stars, from Afrofuturism to Greek myth. All cultures have had this fascination with space. So it's really represented the bounds of humanity and what we can achieve. But under that, there's a paradox as well, because when we think about these space programs, it's sort of like the best of humanity. But then we're also aware that, for example, the rocket programs comes out of World War II, right? Nazi scientists worked on NASA and the space program. Many of the technologies go into weapons. So it's this sort of the terrible and cruel and beautiful paradox of humanity all in one, that we can both, go to the ends of the universe and can keep pushing our knowledge. And also sometimes that knowledge creates war and creates violence and is part of colonialism. We've been fighting these wars for so long. The space mission was during the Cold War. Now we're having another... the original moon landings were during the Cold War. Now we're having another moon mission at a time where people are scared we're on the verge of World War III. So it really captures, I think, the whole spectrum of humanity, and that's what makes it both beautiful and mysterious and fascinating, and in some ways tragic and sad as well.
I want to come back to that dichotomy in a little bit because I think that juxtaposition is something that I've been really feeling intensely. Like the idea of like reading the news and where the news has been, and then also watching these astronauts orbit the moon. And like there's such a large disconnect between what I feel humanity is capable of in those moments. And I'm going to come back to that in just a bit. Anthony, we sort of mentioned a few historic precedents set by this mission earlier. First woman, Canadian and black astronaut to orbit the moon. Traditionally, what have space missions like this one meant for our shared pop cultural history? That idea that we're all looking at this one thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, first, I cannot believe that some of us get to just look out of our backyard windows and see the rockets taking off. That's amazing. Super jealous.
A flex from Pablo. Thank you. Yes.
But I think that what these moments can mean for us from a pop culture perspective really often depends on the lens we choose to take to look at it. You know, this will sound weird, but I think about the Olympics. Every Olympics for the last like 50 years, we're pretty consistently breaking world records. So every year we're getting better and better, and it's through competition. And so when I think about that sort of dichotomy and the polarization and the tumultuous times we're living through, it is really stressful. It's really difficult. And part of the reason that we go to the moon is in competition with other nations. But I think that competition done properly doesn't have to be bad. Certainly it is sometimes, and we're seeing some really clear examples of that, but it can also really drive us in ways that are powerful. It can to make our societies better, right? Like a lot of technologies come out of that make the world better. And so I think that's a really big part of why these moments are so important, because they shape not only our culture, but our world in real measurable ways.
Yeah, there's a temptation to look at them as, as a site of politics, as the way that everything else is a site of politics. There's also, I think, like a part of me that says everyone on Earth gets to see the moon, right? And there's it doesn't get more politically neutral than that, in the sense of like it's the thing that we all share when we look up at the sky and go like, we get to wonder about this thing, and now human beings are closer to it than they've maybe ever been. Or returning to being close to it after a long while of not being, not returning to that. So there's something about that shared reality that sort of grounds me, I think.
I think so. It really is an apolitical thing, and I don't want to glaze over the fact that politics and geopolitics plays a role. I mean, that's the reason we're going back. But I think that what's amazing about it is that this moon program, like the Artemis program, has spanned 3 presidential terms with different presidents from different parties, which speaks to the idea that it doesn't have to be about partisan politics necessarily or about division. 3 separate presidential terms saw fit to keep investing in this because we know the kind of good that it can do. And, the other thing I'd say is that NASA scientists, they don't care what the geopolitics are when we're going to the moon. They're just like, I'll take whatever excuse you'll give me to go to the moon. Yeah, I don't care. Let's do it. Yeah. I'm here for humanity.
Yeah. Ella, I want to talk to you about a moment that's been showing up a lot, and that's been, to just return to the politics for a moment, it's been this exchange between President Donald Trump and Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen. Let's play it.
Well, I have to say I spoke to a very special person, Wayne Gretzky, who I think you know, the great one. And I spoke to your prime minister and many other friends I have in Canada. They are so proud of you, and you have a lot of courage. I'm not sure if they'd want to do that. I'm not even sure if the great one would want to do that, to be honest with you. But you have a lot of courage doing what you're doing, a lot of bravery and a lot of genius. But they're very, very proud of you.
Ella, I saw a lot of conversation about that moment, right? But this idea of like, at least in that, you hear a little bit of Donald Trump sort of playing a little bit of politics. How is the politics of this mission kind of playing out in particular?
Yeah, I mean, many people pointed out that you can't even like go past the moon and escape this man's voice. Like,
he's going to call you, yes.
And I also love that that's the only thing he knows about Canada is like, okay, don't say the 51st state. Don't say that. What else do we know? Wayne Gretzky. Okay, just say that. So, I mean, obviously, and this is not new, that certainly, for example, there's a strain of libertarians that want to conquer space and, see this as an access point. Like once you've destroyed Earth, we can relocate to the moon, you know? Certainly we've seen Elon Musk and his discourse around space. One of the things that's actually, I think, important in this moment is his public science, right? So in some ways, I feel that this moment is a political response to Elon Musk privatizing science and privatizing space and saying, actually, you know, the public funding of science, this is important, this is what it does. But we've actually seen political discourse around like who's going to own space. Space is a military asset. And of course, Donald Trump, with his imperial aspirations, not only over Canada, but over Greenland and of course the Middle East and everything we're seeing, where he's, you know, really the voice of this current American empire. For him to insert himself into this moment, certainly we know that he sees this as part of, you know, this Trump mission to occupy everything. But with that said, I don't want to hand him space. I don't want to hand him this moment. Many people also talked about how the astronauts' response, where they were sort of willing to make it awkward in that moment, right? So I don't want to just cede this moment and say, okay, this belongs to Donald Trump or this belongs to America, because as you said, astronauts went to space and looked back at the planet and became environmentalists in a profound way because they saw how fragile our planet was. People have said in this mission, you know, there are billions of us on this one planet and this is all we have, and we're so united to see humanity like that. So, you know, the deep humbling that can come out of a space mission where people understand that the perspective you can get, understanding that we only have one planet to live on, we're going to have to share it, and we can't lob bombs at each other, and we can't, you know, that I don't want to give that to Donald Trump. I want to always, I mean, this is part of the role of art, is to always believe in humanity and believe in this vision beyond. So there is a politics, there always has been a politics, whether it's the Cold War politics or the politics of now, but there's also humanity.
I think I want to do two things, right? I want to sort of hold the political reality that is inescapable when it comes to shaping not just how we view Artemis II, but also how we view just like this political moment on Earth in general. And also return to the ability of this mission to give a lot of people watching it some magic. And so to that end, Pablo, like one of the things, listen, we've seen a lot of the social media moments that's kind of been flying around because this is the first social media generation moon mission. And that is a really significant thing. So one of the things that have kind of traveled around a lot on social media has been the floating Nutella jar. I've seen that a million different times, understandably so. The tour of the spacecraft, particularly its waste management system. But also we asked you, Pablo, to pick one particular viral moment that caught your attention, and you chose this exchange between the Artemis crew and the mission control.
Our science team helped us out with a couple of relatively fresh craters on the moon that have not been previously named, and our crew would like to propose a couple of potential names. A number of years ago, we started this journey in our close-knit astronaut family, and we lost a loved one. Her name was Carol, the spouse of Reed, the mother of Katie and Ellie, and we would like to call it Carol, and you spell that Carrorll.
Man, that is, you hear the emotion in Canadian astronaut's Jeremy Hansen's voice. He's radioing to mission control requesting that a crater on the moon be named Carol after the deceased wife of Artemis II Commander Reed Wiseman. Pablo, what made that moment the moment for you?
I think it's the same things we've been kind of getting at, the humanness of everything, the human connection, the human story that's behind space exploration in general. Even though there's so much going on right here on Earth, politically, geopolitically, when those astronauts are up there, they're thinking about getting back home to their families, completing the mission, being able to take cool photos and be able to explore space. They're not necessarily always considering the implications back home at all times. They're thinking about the human connection and hoping to give people new perspectives on what we see and what our vantage point from up there could be. So I think that moment was so widespread because everyone knows someone that's lost someone, or everyone has lost someone. And so to see the crew want to dedicate a crater to someone's deceased wife is just a touching moment. And it makes you remember, like, hey, we can all be in this together. Like, we don't need to be fighting or trying to give one country space over the other. Like, there's enough for all of us, and we need to really like get our stuff together and really come together and have new perspectives on differences and opinions. And I think that moment kind of shows all of that. And it was just heart touching, honestly. And I think all of social media saw that as like a real human moment in all of this.
Yeah. Anthony, I would say that a moment that caught me by surprise was when I saw the first photos of Earth that they took from Artemis II. Like, when those photos sort of emerged, and I found myself kind of tearing up about the idea of just being able to look at the window, right? And they end up seeing the entirety of humanity, the entirety of Earth, just from that sort of larger perspective. And I saw those photos sort of travel around a lot. And you know, my kid came up to me and they were like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And I was like, "Hey, kid's 9. Why are you crying?" And I was like, "Look, it's all of Earth as seen from these people who we get a chance to, you know, see through their vantage point." And it's not a surprise to me that my entire social media feed is all about Artemis II. But what do you think it is about this mission that sort of makes it travel so well online?
I just think that it reminds us who we are. You know, we're all multiple identities. We're all, you know, tall and short, big and small, black and white, straight and gay, left and right. But moments like the ones with the crater naming and seeing this spaceship that we call Earth remind us that before all of those things, we're human beings. We all share experiences. You know, if you talk to evolutionary biologists, they call us an ultra-social species. They recognize that the entire secret of humanity's success is not based on just any one person's intelligence. Like, none of this would be possible with just one of us. Because we all have blind spots in our thinking they're invisible to us. And the way we find them is by talking to people with differences from us. And that is what contributes to this process that we have, this cumulative cultural learning process. Like, this is how we stand on the shoulders of giants. It's together. And there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of hurt in the world, but we can overcome it and eliminate all the unnecessary suffering by remembering who we are. We are humans first.
I want to live in that world so desperately. That sort of conception of people so desperately, Anthony. I really do. I think one thing that has kind of been striking to me is also, I think, the flip side of reaction to Artemis II. And maybe I'll ask you about this, because one of the things that I've seen on social media is Elle's like, yes, bring me the political darkness of the world. That is what I'm looking forward to. But I will say, Elle, one thing that's been kind of a bummer has been watching the ways that people I've seen people claiming that Artemis II is a hoax. I've seen people claim that all 4 astronauts exited the spacecraft before it took off. What is it about something like this that lends itself to conspiracy theories? Why do you think these conspiracy theories sort of continue to exist, especially as people are having these beautiful, larger than life human reactions to something that we all do get to share, but then, of course, right alongside everything beautiful that Anthony just mentioned, there is that world as well.
Well, I think when we think about what we call conspiracy theory, it's a lot of things. So first of all, when we're talking about something like science, we've gutted science education for a long time. I think people legitimately often do not understand things like, where does light come from in space? You know, people. So when we've spent decades actually preventing people from having access to education, including, of course, the least privileged people in society, then scientific literacy, that's not people's fault. That's a deliberate thing that happened. Same with critical thought, right? When we're closing down libraries on the weekend because of austerity budgets. In my province, we've cut so much arts. And so last time I was on here, I was talking about all the cuts to education and arts. That has a knock-on effect. And then we're at the same time as we're being denied the tools to think about our world, we just have a deluge of information, some of which is misinformation, some of which is disinformation. We know that are often told to mistrust the evidence of our eyes. We know governments lie to us. So, you know, when you take all of these things and people are trying to make their way through this world and navigate information often without being given the tools, then part of what we get is people trying to come up with their own critical stances and ask questions. And I think something actually someone said to me the other day is that, you know, doubt is really important. Asking questions isn't a sign of lack of faith or lack of belief or lack of community. It's actually one of the most important things we can do. So that still provides an opportunity to have these discussions for people that maybe are genuinely seeking information and asking questions to get an opportunity to be educated. So I think that especially when it comes to thinking and talking about science, there's been we're Black people, right? We've been experimented on. Science has been used against us, and it's also been used by us. And so, people have a mixed relationship to it. And so we can't just sort of say, oh, you're stupid. We have to say, well, how do we give people that education and how do we make these things accessible for everyone?
I appreciate that about you, Elle. I appreciate the idea that like this is not about vilifying the people who are spreading the conspiracy theories or falling to them. It's about sort of understanding the larger systems that sort of make somebody maybe susceptible to them in ways that maybe education has not necessarily reached them. And it sort of reconfigures, well, how do you approach that person and maybe actually engage them? So the Artemis II crew some of them have become viral on their own right. Here's what astronaut Victor Glover said during the broadcast that the crew members made over the Easter holiday.
You guys are talking to us because we're in a spaceship really far from Earth, but you're on a spaceship called Earth. Maybe the distance we are from you makes you think what we're doing is special, but we're the same distance from you. And I'm trying to tell you, just trust me, you are special. In all of this emptiness, this is a whole bunch of nothing, this thing we call the universe. You have this oasis, this beautiful place that we get to exist together. I think as we go into Easter Sunday, thinking about, all the cultures all around the world, whether you celebrate it or not, whether you believe in God or not, this is an opportunity for us to remember where we are, who we are, and that we are the same thing and that we got to get through this together.
Pablo, the wildest thing about that speech is that he said, I don't have anything prepared. And then he just launched into like the most beautiful philosophical treatise you've ever heard. Pablo, what was your reaction to that moment?
I mean, again, I think it goes back to this humanness that's behind all of this space exploration and wanting to encourage people to look at different perspectives, look at different vantage points. And as someone from Florida who I grew up around this, so I do know it's real. It's never even been a question if it's real. I have to understand why someone in Ohio or Alaska would have questions. You don't get to experience this, but for me, it's an undeniable truth that I got to see every day. And I think what he's encouraging here is just have some perspective. We need to come together and we need to at least not always agree, but try to understand each other. And more than anything, manage the gaps in between of our misunderstandings and figure it out together. But really to appreciate what Earth has and what Earth offers us, because without it, we will not be here.
Elle, what I appreciate about this conversation is I feel like we're trying to hold both the political and the profound kind of hand in hand at the same time. And if we sort of return to the reality of Earth right now, return to the reality, what's going on in the world, the idea that like as you watch this, you're also reading headlines about, Israel attacking Lebanon, you're reading headlines about the US and Iran all the time. Is there to you a disconnect between being able to sort of fully sit in the profundity of Artemis II and what this moment is sort of giving us in terms of humanity and togetherness, while also watching war unfold at the same time? Do you feel that disconnect in any kind of way?
I mean, yeah, you certainly have people saying, we have money to spend on this and, people can't even put food on their tables. I mean, we can go back to the famous Gil Scott-Heron poem, Whitey's on the Moon, right? This has been a decades old commentary where he makes this point, like rats are in the projects, but Whitey's on the moon. And this is, of course, when Black people were not allowed to participate in the moon landings. So that's certainly a reasonable critique, but also we actually are capable of abundance, right? It's not like science versus everything else. That is an artificial thing that is created to make us believe there's only so much to go around. There's money for NASA and there is money for housing if we wanted it to be so. I think that's the first piece. And then I sort of said this already, but science can be used for terrible ends, right? Like developing more weapons, developing nuclear bombs, figuring out how to make surveillance technologies. We see science be the worst of us, and then it can also save us. It's medicine, it's human exploration, it's selflessness. So it's both of those things. And we're always held in that moment as people. So this isn't, I think, different. You can go into the worst sites and see the most beautiful human resistance, the most beautiful human transformation, the most beautiful love as you experience the worst of humanity as well. And so I think in some ways it sums it up, right? We can both, we are a people that can go to the edge of the universe, and we are a people that put each other into prisons and concentration camps and bomb each other. And, that's who we are. And we have to make a choice. And so I think this moment actually calls to us, like, what kind of world do we want?
All right, Anthony, I'll give you the last word on this, just on the idea of like watching this disconnect happen, because I do think of you as somebody who pays attention to where wonder is in the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess where my mind tends to go is, thinking about hoaxes and the dichotomy of the moment. a lot of my colleagues in the sciences, they have trouble with people who have trouble trusting the science, and that they can often be quite critical in ways that I understand, but I often question, because curiosity about science and about the intuitions we have about the world around us, like, that is fundamental to how science is done. That's where science starts, is from those questions about can I trust my intuitions? And then we use the process we call science to sort the correct intuitions from the incorrect ones. But if we do that properly, to some of the points that were made earlier, science is amoral. It's not immoral, it's amoral. We can use it for whatever we want. And, when we reflect on Victor's thoughts on, us being in a spaceship, every person you've ever known across all of time, every empire, every king, every peasant has all lived on this one tiny marble. And we can choose if we want to use science for the benefit of all of the people that are alive today and all of the animals and all of the planet itself, or we can choose not to use it. And I think that that's what this sort of stark moment we're presented with makes really clear for us.
Okay, before I let you guys go, this mission is happening at a time when there's a bunch of film and TV shows that are about space that are sort of big in the moment. There's Project Hail Mary, there's the latest sort of Star Trek installment, and also the TV series For All Mankind. I'm going to need each one of you to give me some kind of recommendation that is based on something happened in space, your relationship with space. Elle, why don't you go first?
Yeah, well, I mean, something you might not know about me is I'm a dog fanatic.
Let's
so
go.
I'm going to have 2 dog recommendations. There's 2 movies, in fact, called Space Dogs. So one is an animated film from 2010 that tells the story of the 2 first dogs in the Soviet space program, but it's all about like Moscow street dogs, and it's this whole heroic journey. And then the second one from 2019 is a bit of a fantastical documentary that tells the story of Laika, but it also has mythical aspects and fantastical aspects as well. So I'm going to make a plug for all the animals who went into space and were sacrificed as part of the space program. And these are 2 beautiful, different kind of movies, but that remind us of that position.
Thank you for that reminder. Anthony, I'll go over to you, pal. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to recommend a show I've been watching recently called Pluribus. I don't know if you guys, you've been into it?
I love season 1.
It's
absolutely,
great.
yes.
It's great, yeah.
Yes.
The main character is not likable at first, but it's a great show. And you can appreciate where they're coming from.
Oh, yeah.
Really, it's a show about how it might look on Earth if we came into first contact with aliens. And I don't want to spoil a lot, so I'm not going to say a lot more, but it's just a really interesting exploration of that, and like individualism versus collectivism, and how do we think about ourselves? What does it mean to be a person? What is the meaning of life in many ways? It's a fascinating watch. And the second one is I'm going to take an interesting take, because I'm going to make a recommendation to myself. I haven't seen this yet.
Okay.
But I'm really excited. Everybody I know has raved for decades about, not decades, but a long time, about The Martian, because of just how much of the science that it gets right, and like that they turn science into a verb, because that's how I think of science.
Yeah.
It is a verb. It's a thing. Science is not what you think, it's how. It's how you solve problems. So that's one I'm going to check out for myself. And if anybody wants to join a watch party or something like that, let me know. That'd be cool.
Listen, I'm in. Let's do it. We're going to watch this together. Let's go. I'm in. Pablo, last word to you, pal. What do you got?
Yeah, I've also got 2. I think the first one is just a classic. It's Apollo 13. It's just one of my favorite space movies of all time. I can't hate anything that has Tom Hanks in it.
No,
first
it's
of
not
all.
possible. Can't do it.
But that movie is just the truth behind that mission and how they did get stuck up there, and then how they were able to navigate their way back. Purely human connection, being able to work together, connecting. All things went out the window when they were stuck, and the only thing everyone thought about was, how do we get them back? Everyone was so laser focused on this one mission together, and I think it just is a beautiful way to show togetherness and connectedness. The second one is actually the Dune series. I know it's a little bit not necessarily space exploration, but it is about a different planet in space, thousands of years in the future, and what could potentially happen with the invention of AI, and how that can affect humankind, and how also we as people may or may not mutate based on what we do here on Earth, and how the planet actually lives, thrives, or dies, and all that. So I think both of those offer, one, a human connection, but Dune offers a look into our future if we don't figure out how to make human connections and how to fix things here. So 2 of my favorites. I just really love them, and obviously, being from Florida, I just love space.
You call them recommendations, I call them homework. I'm ready to go. Let's do this. Thank you guys so much for being here, and thank you for those recommendations. That was just lovely. Thanks again.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anthony Morgan co-hosts the CBC program The Nature of Things. Pablo the Don is a culture critic and part of Those Wrestling Girls podcast. They were in Springfield, Massachusetts. Elle Jones is a poet and assistant professor in the Department of Politics at Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. We'll be back on Monday. We'll see you then.